Welcome back. This is my explanation of the solar system quiz. There are 3 diagrams you'll see in that quiz, and one of them is kind of hard to spot, actually. If you think about it, it's kind of hard to lay out the positions of the planets. Referring to this right here, A, B, C, D, and then E has dash, 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 E, F, G, H. I guess I didn't choose the letter I because I looks like it could be an L. So I just skipped right to J. But anyways, here's the sun. And the little memory trick that I always grew up with was my very excellent mother. Just notice I skipped the E because that's the asteroid belt. I like to put that in there. I like my students to know that there's an asteroid belt in between Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, between Mars and Jupiter. My very excellent mother just served us 9, and then it would be pizzas, but Pluto is no longer considered a planet. So I've had students come up with alternate versions. My very excellent mother just served us noodles. Whatever works for you. All that matters is that you can remember it. And so my starts with an M. You might get that mixed up with Mars, but we've got my very excellent mother just served us 9 pizzas. So we got 2 M's, but all right, so there's 2 M's, and you just need to know that the first one is closest to the sun. So I think of Mercury. They used to put Mercury in thermometers, so that's how I remember Mercury versus Mars is closer to Earth. Let's see, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. And I don't know if you have ever watched that third rock from the sun or whatever. That's about Earth. So we're the third rock from the sun. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter, just served. So that'd be Saturn, us, Uranus, and then Neptune, and Pluto is no longer a planet. So that's the planets laid out. And one thing I do like to point out to my students is that these are kind of regularly spaced. And then once you get to this point, let's see, how does it work? Yeah, okay, so if you take this from F to G and double it, you get to H. And then I guess if you just keep the same distance. Yeah, I'm thinking of something called Bode's rule, and it's not really probably even worth mentioning, but at least for this one, it works. All right, so moving on to this one. This one's probably the most important for you to actually know for the big state test, is just understanding that the tilt of the Earth is what's responsible for the seasons. Don't get tricked into thinking that, summer is the time of year when the Earth gets closer to the sun, so it's warmer. That doesn't really, that's not what dictates the seasons. What dictates the seasons is, for example, and I like to start, I don't start with A or C. Of course, the label of the letter could be different for different diagrams. I always start where I can clearly see that, like, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, so that's going to be summer for the northern hemisphere. Likewise, the southern hemisphere is tilted away, so it's going to be winter in the southern hemisphere. So in my mind, I would write summer, maybe with the little pencil right here in my mind, summer up here. And then if I were to find out, notice there's an arrowhead right here. So these planets are going, the Earth is going around this way. And if it's summer in the northern hemisphere, then we got the fall in the northern hemisphere, and then winter. And that agrees with our logic because now it's tilted away, winter in the southern or northern hemisphere. And then it would be spring in the northern hemisphere. Because otherwise, if you don't start on these two extremes, it can be kind of confusing to figure out A and C. But that's how you do it. Start off where a place where you know for a fact, okay, this is leaning towards the sun, so it would be the summer in the northern hemisphere, and just follow that same hemisphere around and label them in your mind, and then do the same for the southern hemisphere so you don't get confused. All right, now move across to the phases of the moon. Some basic things to know here. I might ask you when a new moon or a full moon happens. Like, notice that if you were standing right here, it was the middle of the day, then there'd be a new moon directly overhead or somewhere, high in the sky, right? And that would happen with the sun in a straight line with, of course, if that straight line was perfectly straight, then you'd have an eclipse because the shadow of the moon would be hitting the earth. But likewise, on the complete other side, we got the full moon over here. And there's some technical jargon, like as you move from a new moon to a crescent, because notice if you were here, you'd look up and see just a sliver, a crescent of the I guess they're trying to show you that with this other little moon, that if you were looking up, you'd only see this part, just a little sliver. But this is how it would actually look in the sky. And that's called waxing. As it grows, as the lighted side gets bigger, that's called waxing. And this would be called waning, waxing and waning. And the term waxing and waning is used sort of generically in our language to talk about things growing and shrinking. So let's see. This would be the first quarter. This would be, this is a crescent because it's a thin sliver, whereas this is a gibbous. And those are, technical jargon, waxing, waning, crescent, gibbous. I think everybody hears the term crescent moon, but nobody ever really says, oh, look at the gibbous moon. But for science, those are technical, like I said, jargon that you would need to know. Another thing that might happen here is, when's the full moon? And you'd have to say, like if I said, at what time of day or night, I guess, would the full moon be directly overhead? And you'd have to say, like midnight, right? And if that alignment of the moon, earth, and sun becomes perfect, then you have an eclipse. The eclipse that happens at night is a lunar eclipse. The eclipse that happens during the day is a solar eclipse. Not too hard to remember. Moving right along, notice the arrows go this way, by the way. I just assume that you know that. From the full moon to the gibbous here, that would be a waning gibbous because it's getting smaller. The lighted side is getting smaller, and then you have the quarter moon, and then the waning crescent. So waning gibbous, waning crescent. So those are the kinds of terms that you need to know. And now that you've had your explanation for these three diagrams, I expect you do quite well on the quiz.